Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of In Lay Terms. Today, I'm joined by my friend, Mr. Sean Taylor. Sean, welcome back to the show.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. It's been a minute, huh?
It has. I think the last time we talked is during the BC election.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then I guess we kind of lost touch after that.
yeah, it's been busy. A lot of stuff going on in the world.
Yep. Yeah. Never a dull moment. You watched my episode on Cerberus at the Improv with Andre Milosh and Timothy Knight, and then you called me and you just filled me in on so much information. So why don't I just hand it over to you and you tell me what you think is going on in the Middle East right now?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I should start. I don't know what's going on. I don't think many people know. Um, I'm surprised at listening to all the talking heads, and they're just taking everything at face value. And I don't see a lot of super in-depth analysis. People will be talking about superficial things. Like I follow like the guys that you were talking to earlier, right? Like Douglas McGregor, Scott Ritter. And I like those guys. They're Army guys. I'm Army guy. Um, I've been listening to them for a while, and it strikes me how everyone's just talking about what appears to be happening, and they don't really put it in a lot of context, right? Like this surprise attack that Israel employed last week. Um, like this started a long time ago, and I don't see a lot of discussion to connecting the dots, right? And again, like I said, what we're seeing right now, and you look at the meltdown that's going on in the states as a lot of Trump's supporters, um, are abandoning him and calling him crazy, and a lot of this stuff looks like it's really crazy on the surface, but it's just asking yourself, like, what are we actually seeing? Okay, so um, when you look at this attack that happened a week ago, yeah, it seems like this was lured in. Iran was lured into these negotiations under false pretense, and this stuff was going on in the background. But this isn't something that happened just recently. Like, let's look over the last few years, like October 7th. To think and that's been pretty much. I don't think that's a conspiracy theory anymore. We've had so many people within the Israeli government and in the IDF talk about how that this was allowed to happen, right? And some people believe that it was an MI6 operation, but the amount of insiders that would be required for this to happen, when you have a security system like the state of Israel, like a sparrow crosses that border and they know about it, right? And to think that um, this massive attack just happened, and catching the Israelis completely unaware, right? As this has been pointed out by several people within the IDF and the Israeli government itself, that's just impossible. Okay, so why would that happen? Well, why does it always happen, right? We look at these trauma-based mind control events that governments use to control public consensus to be able to do things that they normally wouldn't be allowed to do. And we've been watching the fruits of that, unfold over the last 2.5 years, watching this genocide in Gaza. And, much to, the dismay of a lot of the people in the region and around the world that have been watching this live on TV unfold, and nothing has stopped it, right? And it's being supported by the Americans. So with the Americans and the attacks that they've been doing on the Houthis, with the Israeli adventures into Lebanon and the pager episode, what we've seen is a systematic diminishment of all of Iran's proxies in the region. And talking with a friend from Syria when we watched that, just a few short weeks ago, within 2 weeks, they basically completely overran Syria with the help of Turkey. So clearing out the corridor that they would need to be able to make strikes in Iran, right? And what happened as soon as that was over with, the Americans, anything that was painted green in that country, they dropped a JDAM on it, right? They completely eradicated all tactical infrastructure for Syria to be able to defend itself or put any sort of anti-air.
Sorry, Sean. For the audience that doesn't know, what's the significance of green? What's a JDAM?
Oh, okay, so any military equipment, any anti-air. A JDAM is a bomb, the American standard munition that they use, right? So basically, the Americans went in with the Israelis as well, and they bombed all of the military equipment, reducing, Syria's capacity to defend itself, right? So when you start to look at what's happening now, and I don't really see too many people talking about this, right? In a vacuum, this looks crazy, but this war, right? This started on this kinetic phase started on October 7th, right? And we're seeing something that we've never seen before. We're seeing blowback on the nation of Israel in a significant fashion, right? The fact that, there's parts of Tel Aviv right now that look like Gaza. We've never seen this before. And a lot of people, you look at this, you look at the actions that people are doing, and everyone's like, Trump's a madman, or Trump's stupid, or all these things. And I'm not saying that what's happening shouldn't be taken on face value, but these people, they don't make dumb mistakes usually, right? We see these things, and a lot of times you don't figure out what's happening. We're in the fog of war, and you don't figure out what's happening. But I'm looking at this as this may be a betrayal of Israel by the Americans. I don't know. I just, the way that I was alerted to this, I was watching the futures in the oil markets. I trade, and Thursday night, oil suddenly jumped up $5 a barrel, right? And I went digging around, trying to figure out what's going on. And then it's like, oh, Israel's lighting up Tehran. And I was expecting a bloodbath the next day. But the markets didn't really, like, to them, it was a nothing burger. And it's like, okay, so what are we seeing here? Because this looks like it could be the beginning of World War III, or the kinetic phase of World War III. We've been in World War III for a while. But like, this could be the beginning of some really, really bad things. And the market was just like, whatever. Oil went up a few dollars a barrel. But I think the S&Ps were down 68 points the next day, which is nothing, right? They'd been up 2 weeks straight. So there's no fear in Wall Street. Like, if this was what it looks like, the markets would be crashing. Oil would be over $100 a barrel. But this looks like that this has been all planned out, right? Trump's, when he was first elected and he did his tour through the Middle East, right? And a couple months back, we saw this surprise increase of production by OPEC. They did the same thing before the Iraq war, right? Increase oil production, so we offset what's going to be disrupted by this conflict, right? So I don't think this may have been, I have no doubt that this was a surprise to Iran, but that this, to think that this caught everyone completely by surprise, that I think you look at this, if you pan out a little bit, we see the previous 2.5 years has been a layup to this. So I don't know. The fact that this amount of damage is being done to Israel right now, and is being allowed to happen, I can't think of another time in history where they would be left out high and dry like this. And I'm curious, like everyone, to see where this is going to go. I don't have any great insight into this, but to think that all these talking heads on that we're seeing on TV and on YouTube and on alternative media, they're all kind of parodying the same things, and it's like, this has nothing to do with Iran's nuclear program. This has been something that they've been pushing for. Well, Netanyahu has been pushing for this since '90, right? When we talked earlier, I was like, that interview that General Wesley Clark did years ago, when he laid out, that this is the plan. We're going to take out 7 nations in 5 years, and Iran was at the last nation on the list. And this looks like the fulfillment of that plan. But the fact that the United States haven't stopped this, and that Israel's being allowed to get a very bloody nose, makes me hopeful that something has shifted, that we may see, it sounds like Davos already has a guy to install, it's regime change, but this might be, a dual regime change, and, a radical way to create stability in the region. I don't know. What did you listen to some different people than I do. What's your take on things?
I don't know. I just, it looks to me like what happened 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago with the drone strike on the Russian strategic bombers is the same people are behind it, because in both cases it's drones. In both cases they smuggled them in somehow. And I hear that, well, not I hear, but people are saying that Putin is really pissed off. Like they traced it back to MI6. And it feels like somebody has hijacked the US. Maybe this happened decades ago, but when I'm talking about DC, City of London, Brussels, Davos, if that
So
makes sense.
yeah, and I agree, right? Like, you look at this this power structure that's been in place since the French Revolution and the formation of the Bank of England, right? This is what we're up against. But the fact that there has been a pause and we're seeing such blowback against Israel, actually makes me hopeful, that that we're pulling away. Like, you look at what's going on, like Iran's the eye in bricks, right? To think that this is just going to be allowed to happen, I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than what we're privy to, and I'm surprised that there's not more talk about. Alex, what's his name? He talks with Tom Luongo quite a bit. They're I'm more along the lines with those guys. They're actually talking about, the
Yeah.
longer game. And Alex Keynes, is it? Yeah. Right. Where, perhaps Trump is doing this, but the fact that we're seeing these delays and the things he's saying right now, like, they're like, he's saying all these stupid things. And it's like, well, is he a stupid person? And would they be allowing this to happen if it was just the same plan as we've been seeing marched out over the last several decades? Something looks different here, right? And you look at this this split that's occurring, right? And we've seen that up here in Canada too. Like Mark Carney's team, European Union, right? And you look at this this track that we've been on forever, because up here in Canada we love to point down, it's like, okay, look, the Americans are the stick that this power structure beats the world with for the last century. It's like, well, we're participants in it too. Our tax dollars funded CF-18s to bomb Libyans as we overthrew their government, right? Like, we're participants in this too. And you look at this, what is appearing to be a fracture, and there appears to be a pulling away from that old world order, right? Or the new world order, whatever you want to call it, right? It's not new. It's been around for a long time. But you look at just, the repatriation of metals, all the gold and silver that's leaving the LBMA and coming back to the COMEX. You look at all these different things in addition to what we're seeing, and something different is happening here. So I don't know, maybe,
So you asked me what I think is happening, and there's a lot of hope and speculation in this, but
yes.
So 2016 June, you had Brexit. The Davos, let's call them Davos, they started freaking out because they lost the city of London. And then November 2016, Trump gets in. 2020, they basically they declared war all throughout, but they stole the election from Trump. He claws his way back, and I think since 2024, Trump has been at war with Davos and Mark Carney. Davos basically parachuted him into Canada to sacrifice Canada to bog down Trump until they can figure out how to deal with him.
Okay, and so you think Trump is swinging back to Davos and is going to support Israel?
This is just my opinion. Like, it's just we're just two guys talking here. But yeah, if that's the case, and Trump does want to what do you call pull back to the Western Hemisphere, North South America, he doesn't need Israel. He wants to get rid of Israel, but in a way that doesn't result in their slaughter. And if he can get Israel to get a bloody nose, as you say, maybe it'll scare them and they'll finally realize they have to be at peace with their neighbors, not at war. And then America doesn't have to keep funding them for all eternity.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of people in Israel calling Trump the Messiah, right? And you see, just before the election, he visited Rabbi Schneerson's grave, and you look at, the majority of people that wear the hat and put their hand on the wall are part of the team. If that's all deception or not, it's just, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes here than what the majority of people are talking about. And it looks like they've already, they're throwing names around. They've already got a guy to take over in Iran, the Davos guy, right? And it's just like, how long are people going to tolerate this in the region? Like, this goes back to, the where this first split happened back in the 50s, right? When Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil fields and kicked the Brits out, right? They assassinated him, installed the Shah, and then we had the Islamic Revolution, in the late 70s there, and they've been the bad guys, in our narrative ever since. If this is a ploy to break that, because you see what's going on in Iran right now. Like, there's a lot of insiders on this team, like the internal drone strikes, the way they've effectively, decapitated the majority of the hardliners, taken out all the generals. There's it's got MI6 fingerprints on. Like, that's the way that they do things, right? So if they think that they've got a good enough handle on this and have created enough civilian unrest to overthrow the government, it's the pause. The pause is what's making me think something's different happening here. I got to say, when I saw that the Nimitz carrier group was being sent there, that I found that kind of alarming, because
Liberty. Did you think of the USS Liberty?
Well, yeah, like, I was surprised that the Nimitz was still afloat. I'm like, what? That boat's still around? And it's 50 years old to be decommissioned next year. And it's like, okay, well, how do they drag the Americans into wars? 9/11, Gulf of Tonkin, Lusitania, Pearl Harbor, Fort Sumter, right? Like there's always some catastrophic attack that persuades the Americans to go to war. This is how they've been maneuvered into pretty much every war that they've been in. What better way than to sink a nuclear carrier? So that made me a little suspicious. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's a 50-year-old
Sean,
carrier that
I
was about to
I
be
should
decommissioned.
I should
What's that?
probably let you know. Just I guess you could say breaking news. In the last few minutes, Trump announced that they bombed the 3 nuclear sites in Iran. So the U.S. has officially gotten involved.
Okay.
And yeah, we're off to the races. I mean,
Well, it
I
looks
can.
like we're up for more of the same then.
I mean, I don't know. If it's America, so America can technically go around bombing people, and it's not considered a war. It's just considered a day that ends in Y. So we'll see what happens.
You look at how, like, a large part of Trump's base are evangelical Christians, and they seem unable to differentiate between the nation of Israel and the state of Israel. It's for the America First MAGA crowd. This is going to be a bridge too far. And to see them torch, like they were even leading up to this, there's been a lot of people calling for the impeachment of Trump if he goes ahead with this. Yeah, this
I've
changes
heard
things. I guess I should have sold some positions yesterday.
I was actually going to check the price of gold right now. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen now to the midterms, because it seems like this sort of populist movement that wanted to get out of these forever wars, to dismantle the CIA, like Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson were talking about, we have to dismantle the CIA. And I don't know what effect it's going to have on the midterm elections if a portion of the Trump coalition base abandons them.
Yeah. When they show us they show us who they are through their symbols, right? And you've got those 3 big obelisks in the Corporation of the City of London, Washington, D.C., and the Vatican, right? And this is the power structure that's been around forever. And I was hopeful that we were going to see Russia and the United States kind of migrate towards each other, away from Europe. They
Yeah.
seem bound and determined to plunge us into war. And yeah, if they're openly bombing Iran now, that's really not good.
How much farther do you think they're going to be able to push Russia without Russia just retaliating? Because MI6 being behind the attack on the strategic bombers, England is a nuclear capable country. They attack the nuclear capacity of Russia.
The amount of restraint being shown by the Russians right now, I don't know, man. Like this shifts things a lot. I don't know how they can let them go down. It's interesting. Erdogan, like, Turkey's got the largest standing army in Europe, in that region, anyways. And they've got indigenous Generation 5 fighters now that they're making their drone program. Like, they're a huge military force, and the fact that they worked with Israel to overthrow Syria, they're opportunists, right? And the blowback that's coming, the fact that this genocide that's been going on in Gaza has been, on everyone's TV for the last 2.5 years. The amount of resentment and anger, um, not just in the Muslim world, but in the whole world and domestically, we're seeing. I don't know how, supporting that regime is going to be tenable domestically, even. Like, you look at what's going on in the States right now. Like, the mandate that they've been given was to pull America out of wars, right? To work on making America great again, and stop being the world police and pull back. And this is the exact opposite of that. So, yeah.
What's
Yeah,
the
we're in for an
what's the
interesting
purpose?
couple. Go ahead.
What's the purpose of Gaza? I mean, is it just literally land? Is it a thorn in Israel's backside? Because committing genocide, that's a big gamble. You're assuming that you can get away with it without
Well,
international pressure.
it's essentially an open air prison, right? And has been for forever, right? The Nakba, the original conflict and ethnic cleansing there, right? They consolidated and pushed the Palestinians into different areas, um, and they've been there for a long time. It's kind of been coming on people's radar. Like, they've had such a good control over American media, and there was a really good documentary, "The Occupation of America's Mind." Occupation of the American Mind. It came out in 2015, and it was a really good illustration of how, after that, I forget the name of the camp. There was a massacre. There was a massacre in
In
a
Lebanon,
refugee camp. Pardon me.
that was in Lebanon. The Christian militia went in and
Yeah, Christian
slaughtered. Yeah,
Zionists went and they massacred all those Palestinians, and like there was significant political blowback within the United States, and seeing that, they're just like, okay, we cannot let this happen again, and they built the infrastructure to be able to control, media, to the point where you're not allowed to show these things, you're not allowed to talk about these things. um, we've seen that kind of come apart recently, right? Like this conversation right now, like we're just talking about geopolitics, but this conversation just a short time ago, we'd be both branded as anti-Semites, right? When you're talking about these things. And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And whether that's organic or whether that's just, part of the shift, like, Israel's a construct. This is it's basically an aircraft carrier that they plop down in this region to be able to control these things, right? And their portrayal as this, the amount of control within the education systems, within our own religious organizations, and what they've sold it to be. It was the sacred cow that you couldn't criticize, you couldn't do anything, and then all of a sudden, that's no longer the case. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're just going to use them as a scapegoat, right? It's an entity they created, but they, when you need a hero, they'll provide one. When you need a villain, they'll provide one. They've
Sean,
got.
I understand what you're saying. Where you're saying they're sacrificing Israel, and I feel it too. Like even 3 weeks ago, if we had said what we've said, it would be considered anti-Semitic. And then overnight, Tucker Carlson came out, a whole bunch of people came out. Some of it, there were some grumblings during the election. I get it. But then, like, it took off. And my question is, if they've created Israel, when I if they've created Israel and they're using it like they created NATO and they're using NATO, Why would they sacrifice it? Like, what's in it for them to sacrifice it?
That's the $1 million question, right? What's the end game here, right? And are we seeing, this, some of the things that are being said within the States, like, Jamie Dimon last week, he's like, China's not our biggest enemy. Our biggest enemy is within, like, it's domestic. And for him to say that, like, that's a pretty bold statement, right? And you look at this, you look at this state of flux that we're in right now, and it's pretty incredible. Like, watching these hardcore leftists who we've considered the enemy for so long, they're coming to the realization about a lot of things, and a lot of the stuff that they're saying is true now. And it seems to be people are swapping positions, and it's it's incredible. We've been gaslit and lied to by the powers that be for so long. It's really, really hard to determine what's real, and I'm pretty good at seeing through the spells. And you see all these talking heads, and they speak with absolute certainty, and this is what's going on, and I know this, and this is what's going on. And they're just kind of, regurgitating all this superficial minutia that everyone can see. But what is the further game here? And if it is nuclear war with Russia that they're aiming for, because that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like with the with the Davos City of London crowd. This pause that we saw up until just a few minutes ago kind of gave me hope that the Americans were trying to pull away from that. But the game is afoot, right? Like, I don't know. I'm going to have to do some serious recalculations now that the Americans are actually dropping bombs, because I didn't think they would. I didn't think they would for they gave that 2 week pause, but they're not going to say what they're going to do, because if we know, then the enemy knows, right?
You mentioned earlier, you said we've been in World War III for a long time. Are you talking about like the beginning of Ukraine? Are you talking about when they tried to dismantle Russia after the Soviet Union? How far back?
Dude, I I don't know how far you want to go down.
Federal Reserve? Yeah.
I don't even look at it like I took World War II history in university. Proud member of the Canadian Forces for 2 decades, where we celebrated all our battle honors, and you learn about this, and you grow up, and these are touchstones. These are touchstones of who we are as a people, right? We went over to Europe last century, and we saved the world from fascism, right? And the things that have been declassified, since over the last 15 years, right? Everyone that was involved in World War II is dead now, and these things start to come out. And the amount of lies and misrepresentations and distortions about what has been going on, people are starting to figure it out, right? And whereas, you look at this power structure that pitted Germany and Russia against each other, and killed a significant amount of the people in the world, right? And you look at the challenges that a few small nations presented to the entire world order, and it's like, okay, we cannot let that happen again. If you have an ethnic, cohesive, homogenous, cultural and ethnic bloc that decide that they don't want to play our games anymore, they can be quite problematic. So since the end of what we call World War II, the kinetic phase anyways, right? Since the end, what have we seen? We have seen the systematic movement of peoples to break up any homogenous societies in the West, right? Yeah, China's still full of Chinese, India's still full of Indians, right? But in all the Western countries, we've seen mass immigration and this pushing of this multiculturalism to be able to fractionate any societies that could pose a threat to this new world order. And you know what we witnessed, you know, in Canada over the last 5 years. See, like it used to be, I was infantry for most of my career, right? So guys like me get trained up, and then we go over and do the business, and that's how you fought wars. In this 5th generation war that we find ourselves in, right? The frontline soldiers are teachers, doctors, nurses, lawyers, police, right? That have been corrupted with this mind virus, right? Through mass formation, by indoctrinating people through education systems and an omnipresent media that just pumps this stuff into you, so you don't even know what's real anymore. This is why we're at where we're at. Like there's a large percent, like there's a lot of people right now that are cheering that America's bombing Iran, right? Like there's a huge portion of people that think this is awesome, you know. We need to bomb Iran, they're the enemy. And it's like, okay, well, are all the CEOs of pharmaceutical companies that, you know, produce vaccines, are they Iranians? Right? Was the head of the CDC and all the chief science officers Iranians? Right? You look at what's gone on, like right now in Canada, and I kind of have a different take than most people, because rather than watching in the news, like what I've been doing, you know, since I was fired as a nurse for speaking out, I'm helping people navigate cancer therapies using repurposed drugs and metabolic protocols, right? And I'm seeing this massive increase in cancer that we're experiencing, right? All across the Western world, we're experiencing this, right? And people are saying it's, you know, anxiety over climate change and, you know, poison in our food, and, you know, it's multifactorial and causation. But I think we can all agree that we've been sold a bill of goods that has degraded the strength of our nation, right? You look at across the Western world, the decrease in fertility rates, right? We did this massive medical experiment a couple of years ago, and we're seeing the effects of this, and no one's talking about this, right? So we're looking, you know, we're focusing on this stuff going on over in Iran right now. The war's being fought everywhere, and you know, it just happens to be in kinetic phase over there, but we're watching these things happen, and no one seems to be connecting those dots. Like I never hear anyone talking about this. They talk about, you know, how many weapons, how many missiles Iran has, how many planes. It's just like, okay, well, look what's going on domestically. Like we're seeing the effects. Our healthcare system is in collapse, right? We're in BC. You and I live in a jurisdiction where if I sell you raw milk, I could go to jail, but cocaine is legal. Okay? The leading cause of death in this nation for 15 to 59-year-olds is opium overdose. That's an opium war, right? They're very good at it. They waged 2 of them against China. Again, back to the corporation of the City of London, right? Like, this is what's happening. And and they tell you who the enemy is. And it's just like, I'm with Jamie Dimon on this one. The enemy is here, right? And as they divide us and pit us against each other and have us squabbling, and they give us, we have this illusion of democracy that you participated in the last go, right? So I'm sure your view of things is a little different now, but you look at this and it's just like, what are we doing, right?
Sean?
We've done things that we're not walking away from, like the impact of this. So you look at this meteoric rise in cancers, just as we have these billions of dollars of these massive cancer centers open across the country. You think that's a coincidence? Right? And no one's talking about this. Like, we just went through a federal election, and what we're talking about: red man bad, tariffs are terrible, and the climate emergency. What about what our government just did to us? This people are starting to see. And this is what makes me hopeful, because I've been screaming this shit at the top of my lungs for the last several years, and our effectiveness, I think it's starting to have a cumulative effect, right? Like, I've been talking with Max a couple of times, over the last couple of months. I saw him when he was out here during the last federal election. They so effectively removed us from the conversation. Like, it was like Ron Paul in 2011, right? They ridiculed him, they slandered him, and that didn't work. And they just took him out of the conversation. They'd have a debate, he'd win the debate, he wasn't even in the polls, right? The CBC, we weren't even in the polls. The fastest growing political party in the history of this nation, right? And they completely took us out of the conversation. They slandered us. The Conservative Party hired a publicist group to organize protests, to slander us in the media. You look at all this so-called alternative or independent media. It was all bought and paid for, right? That was revealed. Andrew Lawton and True North Media, they slandered Max and said a bunch of lies about him when he ran in Manitoba there. And now he's got a seat in Parliament, right? I thought they might have been paying him with sandwiches, but apparently they...
That's a hell of a lot of sandwiches. Yeah. Sean,
right?
let me
It's like, how
let me
long...
jump in here, Sean.
What's that?
Let me jump in here real quick.
Yeah, man.
You're right. Our message is getting through. I don't even know who to trust anymore, but Steve Bannon, he was talking to Tucker Carlson, and he said the reason Ron Paul and Ross Perot before him, they failed to do what Donald Trump did is because of the 2 massive pressures. One was the debacle in Iraq, the Iraq war for 20 years, and Afghanistan. The second one was the 2008 great financial crash. And what I'm trying to say is, like, it's like a pressure cooker, and the pressure is building up and it's building up, and it will explode. I think that's what you're seeing now with all of these people that are turning on Israel. People are just saying we've had enough of this. Like, this is not, we're getting more and more poor every year.
Yeah. And yeah, does Israel control the United States? Right? So you look at the amount of dual citizenship Israelis that inhabit the political infrastructure of the United States, right? And an argument can be made. But Israel's a creation of who? Right? Of London. right? And you look at, again, there's symbolism. Like there is an audacity to Israel that just like I admire. Like there's an honesty there. They don't apologize for anything. Like it's on their patch. If you look at the shoulder of IDF soldiers right now, they're wearing a patch that's the Greater Israel patch, right? It's on their flag, right? The two blue lines from the Nile to the Euphrates, and the Star of Remphan in between, right? Like like they show us, and you look at these institutions that created that state. You know, back to that was a deal that delivered America to the First World War, the Balfour Declaration, right? This was a deal that was done in London. And are we going to be able to break away from that? And a lot of people thought Donald Trump was. And I don't have a lot of faith in the general public's ability to see what's going on. They seem to be so easily led. I thought that with things becoming so obvious that more people would pay attention, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Like we're pretty far along the trajectory of this, and the inability for people to even care. And you know, like there's method to the madness. Like this stuff was all figured out back in the 50s and 60s with the MK Ultra stuff, right? Like you look at the Ash conformity studies, where they determined that, you know, the majority of women and low testosterone men will filter new information through the lens of, will this be believed by the tribe? And you can see the evolutionary reason for this, right? But if everyone is using that lens to how they interpret their reality, and we're being spoon-fed this nonsense 24/7, how do you overcome that, right? And that's the task that we have, and that, like what you're doing with your show, what I've been doing politically for the last 8 years, just trying to tell people, just like, look at what's going on. Like you think we'd be at the point now where people would be starting to question, and we're still plodding along. The hippocampal damage that they say can be caused by this nonstop fear. Like we've had this fear porn pumped into us, nonstop. It's on our phones, it's on our TVs, it's on our radios, 24/7. And the psychological effect that has with people, I think a lot of people are just fed up and they just don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
Right. And you still see people, like, they're walking around with, they're afraid of the air. They're wearing masks. They're afraid of global warming.
There was I go to a corner store here to buy my groceries. They know me, and they had a plexiglass. They still have it. And I told the guy, I'm like, it might be time to take it down. And he's like, well, you never know, if something's going around. Better safe than sorry. It's 2025. He's got a piece of plastic on.
Yeah. And for people that are waiting for this savior to come along, a lot of people thought that was Trump, right? Trump's the savior. Well, if you look at who funds Trump and you look at who he surrounds himself with, and I'm not saying, I think there's different factions at play here, obviously, right? This has got to come from bottom up, and it's frustrating, the ineffectiveness we've seen at our efforts to try to raise the consciousness, and the inability for people to determine friend from foe, right? Like I just look at, and again, like I said, I kind of look at things a little differently because of my psychological operations background in the military, the fact that I was a frontline healthcare worker and I saw what happened on the front lines during COVID, and subsequently, you know, after being fired and working with all these people, like it's in my face every day. These people, you know, dying of cancers that were given to them, right? And you know, the last provincial election, their ability to shut it down, like in my riding, they canceled all candidates forums, right? Like they don't want me talking to people. And the few interactions that I had, the hatred that people have for me, it's just like, okay, well, what is it about me that you hate? Like the papers call me names and say these things, but you know, I spent 20 years in the military. I went to war for you guys. I've been a paramedic, a firefighter, an emergency nurse. I've dedicated my entire adult life to the service of my fellow Canadians and feel privileged to do so. Like I've had awesome careers. I love it. It broke my heart to lose them, but that strikes me as the actions of an ally, not an enemy. Yet I'm people hate me. And
Uh,
to try to circle that square, it's just like, okay, well, you don't you don't seem to realize who the enemy is, right? And when you look at the actions of our government, and like Zoe, like we've got a housing crisis here, and you know, like talking with friends, like I've got people that are friends that are trying to build houses on their acreage for family members. It's like, no, you can't do that. It's not zoned for that. It's like, well, I thought we have a housing shortage. Shouldn't you allow us to build houses? Like that would be a good idea. No, no, no. Right? They want us all stacked up in cities, and you know, and you look at the incentive the incentives that they have for corporations to hire non-Canadians. You know, subsidizing foreign
Sean,
workers.
let's because we're approaching an hour. I
I'm
wanted
getting a
two
little
things.
tangential.
No, no, it's fine. I wanted to, before wrapping up, I wanted you to tell me what you told me before about the purge of the Canadian military you alluded to on the phone call. And there's also a question from the audience about the Canadian military. As a former military man, what does Sean Taylor think of the Canadian Army and its ability, in quotes, to fight the Russian army?
Okay. Well, the only reason to be in the Canadian military today is to expedite your bottom surgery, right? This cultural Marxist stuff that we see going on, it's ramped up to 12 in the military. It's crazy, and I think it's Voltaire who said, people that will believe absurdities will commit atrocities. Okay, and the Canadian military today has tampons in the men's bathroom. Okay, so you look, and this was done during COVID, right? Um, so people that would advocate for you, people that would risk, you know, going against the stream to stand up for people, they've been effectively removed from these institutions. So be it in healthcare, be it in police, the people that wouldn't take a knee and stood up and got loud, they've all been removed, and that's from the army too, right? And the mandates were devastating to the army. There's a lot of people that went, and this, you know, all this crazy stuff. You know, they're flying rainbow flags and making everyone wear masks and stuff like that. It's just like, people with integrity don't tolerate stuff like that, right? So I don't know if you noticed, but this would have been just after the election, so late 2021. There, we went through a 6-month period there when we went through like 4 chief of defense staffs in 6 months. Okay, so the chief of defense staff, that's like the Americans, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, right? That's our top, the general of all the generals, right? And we went through 4 in like 6 months, and they were purging people left, right, and center. And it was just like, okay, well, and it was sexual assault here, sexual assault. And it's just like, okay, so is every general in the Canadian Armed Forces a rapist, or was there a purge going on? It's like they purged all the people that wouldn't stand for this, right? And you look at where we've been. Canada has historically been super top heavy, right? Like we've got more generals than tanks, and they've always had this massive officer cadre. So in a time of war, you could do a mass recruitment, bring a lot of the troops in, train them up quick, and you've got an officer class that is ready for a large army. We've got a large army's officer cadre, but we've got a very small army, right? So what have we noticed over the last several years? We've noticed very large amounts of fighting age males coming in from sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and India, right? And the being able to removing the citizenship requirement for army enrollment, right? You can just hand out permanent resident cards and sign these guys up for the military. And we hear this happen not just in Canada, in other places too, right? We see this happening everywhere. So effectively, yeah, you could raise a large army with foreigners domestically in a short period of time, right? And as far as your the guy who asked the question, it's not the Russians we need to worry about. Okay, our enemies are in.
Sean,
Right?
let me interrupt you. I agree with I see what you're saying, the Jamie Dimon comment. But to come, let me rephrase what Andre Milosh is saying. We're sending money to Europe. We're sending money to Ukraine. Carney is he's in the Europe camp. Do you think that they would send Canadian soldiers to defend Europe against Russia?
Yes. We'd have to cover a lot of ground before them. This is something I never really thought about, because I'm old and I'm retired. Like, I'm not going. But what was his name? Daniel. He was a young PPC candidate from Montreal. He was out here with Max, and we had a good talk. And his biggest fear was conscription, right? The draft. And it kind of put me on my heels. I'm like, oh, people are thinking about that. And historically, right, like there's precedent for that fear. And you look at our people like Carney throwing in with Team Europe, right? And you look at the split that's happening, which appears to be happening. And again, I don't think we fully know what's going on. That the Americans dropping bombs in Iran now makes it more obvious. I'm still not entirely convinced. Yeah. It is a possibility. They've got no problems throwing bodies at anything. And the fact that we've been supporting these genocides, for a long time. It was like we had mentorship tours going on for a long time. That Ukrainian army, that was a huge, powerful army that we built up with the help of all the NATO countries, right? We had mentorship tours going over there. Like, that was something that was constructed a long time, and Russia's just taken it apart. These people seem bound and determined to go after Russia. Whether it'll come to that, I really hope it doesn't. I don't think the Russians are our enemies. Our enemies have been where they've been for the last 400 years. And the fact that people are starting to see this and starting to talk about this make me extremely hopeful. And for a guy who's been under these spells for most of his life, I recognize the difficulty of unlearning. That's the hardest part of learning, is unlearning, right? And we've grown up watching Rambo beat the Russians, and the Russians have always been the boogeyman. I'm hoping that we can move past that and recognize the face of our enemy.
You and me both.
It was interesting. I was just out in Calgary. My best friend of 30 years just got the government to kill him with MAID. He had pancreatic cancer. And while I was out there, I had a bit of a reunion with a bunch of old Army buddies. And the majority of us would fight Canada before we fought for Canada. And these are guys with multiple combat tours that signed up for unlimited liability to protect this nation. Right? And the psychic change that needs to occur for people to hold that viewpoint, right? Because, like it was in 2002, I swore an oath. And I don't remember exactly what was said. It was probably to the crown, but in my heart, it was to the nation that I grew up in and I love, right? And I would do anything to defend it. Yeah, I don't think our enemies are overseas.
We are living in extremely uncertain times. It's hard to tell what's the truth. Everything changes every day. And, just when you deal with one crisis, they come out with another one. I mean, look, since 2019, we had COVID, elbows up, and now it's this Iran thing.
Yeah.
And I think they've perfected the art of burying us under crises.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. And yeah, the cumulative effect of all this stuff is disengagement, it's apathy. And I would encourage anyone, wherever you are on your trajectory of understanding the reality of the world you live in. I'm filled with an incredible amount of hope. I've been doing this for a little while now, and the conversations that were verboten just even a few months ago, right? The fact that people are talking openly about this stuff, like they're not putting this genie back in the bottle. And I don't know which way this is going to go. There's 1,000 ways this cookie could crumble, and you look at the amount of technological advances, and with AI, like Palantir and their targeting system, that what's the algorithm they use? Lavender, right? Where they're taking humans out of the kill chain. Like they're building lists in every country, right? And people need to know that by taking other humans out of the kill chain, and for people that don't understand, there's a process, right? So back in the olden days, right, if you were part of a recce element, you'd do your reconnaissance and you'd identify a target and you'd laze it, or you'd send it up through the chain of command, and they talk to the Air Force guy, or they talk to the drone guy, or stuff like that, and you would have this what they call the kill chain, and you could bring down fires within the battle space on the enemy. And with the really quick evolution of AI, they've been able to automate the kill chain, so it just takes humans out of the loop, right? So you have a sensor sensing someone with facial recognition, and it's because of things that you've said on social media, and because your cell phone interacted with this guy's cell phone and this guy's cell phone, and these guys are bad guys, so you have a score of this, and it's just like once you hit the threshold, it's like, okay, you have to take this guy out. So all of a sudden a sensor pings someone's cell phone, oh, he's in that building, and it's just automatic. The signal goes out, boom, you drop a bomb on that building, and there's like 30 other people in the building, but you got the bad guy, right? And you look at these new Chinese drones that are using AI to be able to whip through forests autonomously without pilots. right? Like it's
Those drones, they really scare me. I mean, we saw it in the Ukraine war that they made the tanks obsolete, and then the attack on the strategic bombers, and then now what's happened in Iran. That is what's going to change the face of war.
yeah, yeah. Well, and this is the thing, like, and I think the Americans are well aware of this, and who knows what they've got in the pipe that we don't even know about. But you see all these people clamoring to, go to war with the Russians. The Russians, they are battle hardened, and they've rewritten the book. Like, what we've seen in Ukraine is absolutely phenomenal. Like, we went back 2 generations of war. Like, when the Ukraine war started, the violence above ground level was so intense that everyone just dug holes and went in holes for a while, right? And then it was no longer large formations, it was small party tasks. You couldn't amass any equipment or people because they just get taken out, right? So they and the Russians, and you saw the amount of generals that were fired. It was the same thing in Canada, right? Like in June 2006, when we went into combat operations in Afghanistan, like they had an entire company of Patricia's release, right? Officers got out, like it separated the wheat from the chaff in a hurry, right? They're like, no one does stupid like Army stupid, but when the metal hits the meat and you actually are out there doing the do, a lot of that stuff, it just gets down to what works and people that are competent. And Russia's gone through that over the last 2 years, right? And every iteration, every time they rip their relief in place, so they put in a new battle group and they bring the old battle group out, they go back into train. It's like, this is how we fight wars this month, right? So they've got that training evolution going on all the time. This is what works, this is what doesn't, this is what works, this is what doesn't. And we're seeing this mass explosion in drone technology, right? These guys are good to go. So you want to take a peacetime army and go up against them? Like, that is going to be rough days, right?
You
And I
know,
don't and I don't think we need to. Like, is it Russia that did all these things to your nation? That's like, you look at the riots in the streets in France right now, and you look at Africans, you know, completely destroying the Champs Elysees. It's like, did Russia send those guys to you? Know, no, that was your own government. People need to wake up and realize who their enemy is, right? And it's
that's a
not.
yeah, that's a challenge. But going back to what Andre was asking about, are Canadians ready to fight a war against Russia? You mentioned that we have a big officer class and we can quickly take in immigrants as army. What would be the strategy? Like, take 90,000 Canadian soldiers and just put them on the front line as body bags or sandbags?
I I don't really, dude. Look at our military. Like, it's been decimated. What is it? I think the guys that were, I think it was Andre. He had the numbers, right. It was 68,000. Like, the attrition that the mandates did to the army, right? Like, we've got more coastline than any other country on the planet, right? We got no boats. We've, we love to you know um shit talk the Americans all the time, but you know we live under the security that they provide. Our army, is small. Don't get me wrong, like, we're world class. Like, in the beginning of Afghanistan, there our regular force snipers were working with their special forces units, but the quality of soldier has declined as well, right? It had, you go on parade and talking with the guys, it's just like, yeah, it's all long hairs and they don't, right? Like, there's just the amount of discipline. um this There's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of diversity in the front ranks, in the frontline troops, right? And you'll always have um groups of guys that can get the job done. And we've been fighting wars forever. and they'll be able to create an army if they want to. The thing is, it's just, do you want to fight for that? Are you going to let your government manipulating into participating in something that is going against your interest? And so far, we've seen that Canada is willing to do that.
Oh yeah.
Right. We're still pushing the vaccine on kids here. We've seen what, we've seen the health effects of this, and we're still doing it. Right. Again, right. The leading cause of death in our country from 15 to 59-year-olds is opium overdose, and we're still dumping massive amounts of opium on the street. Right. The government's subsidizing non-Canadians to work. Doesn't matter what your color is. If you're a brown Canadian and you show up for a job, but you're a Canadian, right? Tim Hortons will get 75% of your first, I don't know, 1,500 hours or something subsidized if you're a non-resident. Can you think of a quicker way to destroy a nation than doing that? So you've got to ask yourself, like, are these things being done by people that care about your well-being? Are those the actions of a government that is trying to help you?
What's really frustrating is you and I have both run for public office, and you go into these rooms and you think you can inform the people in there, and the people in there, they want to vote for these ass backward policies that will hurt them and their family and their children. And it's very demoralizing. You're like, wait a minute, I'm sacrificing my time and my freedom to help these lunatics?
Yeah. The way, like I said, bottom up is how this is going to be solved. There's no one coming, right? They would have been here. If someone was coming, they would have been here. Like, we're kind of in a tough spot, right? So this is on us, and the movement in the dialogue that I've seen over the last couple of years fills me with hope, right? People, I didn't want to come to the conclusions that I did. Like, this is a shitty go. Like, I spent my life in the army. I love the army, right? And to see what it's become. And, like when I deployed to Afghanistan, I didn't think that Osama bin Laden brought down the towers, but I didn't have a full appreciation of what of things like I do now, because it's become more obvious. And, we don't told the same story. 95% of us come to the same conclusions, right? And these people are very, very good at telling stories. And, that's where the importance of, shows like yours and conversations like this are, to give people maybe a different perspective, or something that is going to trigger their curiosity. It's like, that guy's a crazy person. Why would he say that? It's like, well, look at it. If something that I've said here, and because I don't have all the answers, right? Like, I'm trying to figure this out just like everyone else. But once you start to become curious and look, I think it's just a matter of time before you stumble across the lie that breaks your mind. Right?
Sean, let's end it on one more question from the audience.
Sure.
This is it's Andre. This is a gentleman, and this is a question I posed to you. With the Emergencies Act that got invoked during COVID, like what is the responsibility of the military in such a situation? And do you think the military should have sided with the people?
So, in the military, it's unlawful to, like, you have to, or you've got a responsibility to challenge unlawful commands. Okay. So like I said earlier, just like within healthcare, right? The people that would stand up and say, no, we can't do this, we have to do a better job, those people have been removed, right? And I asked this, like, I've got a good friend who's still in, and he's an officer for one of the reserve units in Calgary, right? And I asked him, if someone, say I'm a young lieutenant, right? They're engineers, and I come up to them and I'm like, hey, Captain, there's tampons in the men's bathroom, right? Like, we're engineers. If we don't base our things in reality, people die, right? When we're putting that bridge or building that obstacle, if we don't base our things in reality, then people die, right? This isn't part of reality. This is political, cultural Marxist dog shit, right? And I asked him, like, what would you do if you had? And he's like, I don't know what I'd say to him. And it's like, well, you don't have to worry about it, because all those people have been removed from that institution, right? When you're on the team, and having friends that are, that are police officers, and have been leading this fight, and looking at the way that they were treated during the mandates, and how they've been effectively shut down, and conducted investigations, and completely had things just thrown out. It's like, no, we're not doing that. The militaries have been around forever, and they're really good at getting people to do things that they want them to do. And they will create an environment that attracts people that will follow those orders, right? And you always have to have safety net people around that are going to go, hey, this is not on, like, we cannot do this. And you look throughout history, and you look at these things that happened last century, and it's just like, how is that done? Like, how did governments didn't do that, people did that. And we saw over 500 million people killed by their governmental institutions last century. And I think this century is going to make that look like Bush League, right? We're already seeing it. And because the violence being used against us right now is atypical, so it's fentanyl overdoses, it's these turbo cancers, it's myocarditis and sudden cardiac death and strokes and pulmonary embolism and all these things, because it doesn't look like violence, right? These mandates killed more Canadians than all the wars we've been in combined. Like, we've been in the Boer War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Afghanistan. These mandates killed far more people than that. Not to mention the poverty that's coming. Like, we're coming to the end of the cycle, right? Like, they've devalued our currency, and I think people don't have a good historical understanding of how many people die at the end of currency cycles. And because the violence is atypical, people don't seem to be noticing it. Whereas over in Iran right now, we're seeing typical violence, and people are focusing on that, as they should be. Like, this is a horror story, and I feel bad. I feel bad for the Palestinians. I feel bad for the everyday Israelis on the street and the Iranians, right? Like, this is a bad deal. But this is happening in our own country, and it looks different. People need to wake up to that. And yeah.
I know I said last question, but I got another one if you have time.
Okay.
You and we've been talking about Davos, City of London. There's a gentleman here. His name is Canuck Saram. He has a different take on it. I want to see what your views are. He says it's this concept of taking an oath to the crown that pretty much many of our problems in Canada flow from that. What's your view on the concept of the crown in Canada?
We're a vassal. Yeah, we're a vassal state, right? Like, this is like, I talk to these common law people, and it's just like, well, this is right. This is, we have our rights and we're sovereign. And it's like, no, right? They have the monopoly on violence. Like, it was Bill Morneau, before he got fired, he spilled the beans, right? It's just like, we don't even have the right to private property in this country, right? If you look at the deed on my house, Queen Elizabeth is on it, right? Like I when I bought a house here in Grand Forks, I pulled it. I'm like, what? What is it? Oh no, that's just a formality thing. It's like, well, why is the Queen on my deed, right? They've created these constructs, and as long as people go along with them, right? This is the standing up. If you start to pay attention to the symbolism that's exhibited in this world, you'll start to figure it out. You have to know what the symbols mean. A lot of this is religious, right? But there's those three big obelisks, right? The Vatican, the Corporation of the City of London, and Washington, D.C. And you've got the spiritual, the financial, and the military arm of what's been going on. And we've seen this. The Americans have been the stick that they have beat the world with for the last century, right? And with the realizations that people are coming to, like I did a speak, Dr. Trozzi and Dr. Hoff were up in the Okanagan, and I did a little speak with them, and I forget what I said, but there was a ex-Marine, he's American, and he took me aside, and we got talking after, and I asked him, and I'm just like, we don't really have this. We've got a proud military heritage of things that we did a long time ago. And every time that we've gone in, we've punched over our weight. Like in Afghanistan, the stuff we were doing, with what we had compared to other nations was pretty impressive, right? But if you've got a great grandfather who fought in World War I, and your grandfather fought in World War II, and the father, fought in Vietnam, and the Gulf War, and then his one and only son died in the deserts of Syria, and he realizes that this wasn't for America. This was for the power structure that is controlling the world. Like, how do you reconcile that? Like, what do? You gave your only son to this? And the veil is being lifted right now, and people are starting to see this. And how long this recognition will take remains to be seen. But it started. Like I said, this genie's not going back in the bottle, and that's what gives me an incredible amount of hope. Because once people recognize that, I'll quote. There was an interview. Ernst Zundel. I don't know if you know who he is. He was a guy that was dragged through the courts, called a crazy Nazi. And anyways, he did this interview with his Israeli journalist, and he had this. They've clipped it. You can look it up on YouTube. And he gives this little 2-minute spiel about how, what happened in Germany in World War II, or before World War II. And you look at the Americans, and they have a revolutionary spirit and a lawlessness to them, that when they figure out what's been done, I think they're going to take care of business, right? And, we have Weimar-like conditions today. We have an education system that sexualizes and promotes the mutilation of our children. We have a society whose art is corrosive and vulgar, and it's just, you look at the degradation that's occurred in our society, the pendulum is going to swing back the other way. And how that goes remains to be seen. And I look at the COVID thing as, some people talk of it as the initiate, the conditioning that's going to lay the groundwork and the milieu for being able to bring us to this total economic control, Agenda 2030, all this bullshit. I look at them. This was their all-in move, because when people fully realize what has been done, there's going to be enough of them that stand up. Yes, we live in a nation of ignorant cowards, but these things are never moved by um, the masses, right? That's the the American 3% movement, right? During the Revolutionary War, only 3% of the people actually picked up arms. It's always done by a minority, right? But once you hit that tipping point where enough people see what's going on, I think change is inevitable. And they think that they have the technological capability to handle us. And who knows? That remains to be seen. Those Chinese drone videos are pretty fucking freaky, right? Like they may, they may have us in a bad spot. But I believe, anyways, that there is an awakening going on, and what is coming, um, they're done. They're done eventually, and I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know if I'm going to live to see it, but we have a duty, I think, for those of us that see it, to try to alert the others. And the more I can prepare my community for the possibilities that are coming, like the more ivermectin you have in your medicine cabinet, the more vegetables you have in the garden, the more gold and silver you have in the safe, and the more guns and ammo you have in your basement, the better my community is, right? And
You want to know something funny, Sean? Oh, this is kind of sad. I was talking to a gentleman in Iran. I talked to him this morning, and
yeah,
he said he saw this coming, this conflict 6 months ago, and he went and he bought a whole bunch of non-perishable food items, like rice, flour. His parents, they called him a lunatic. He was going to the gun range. Um, you can buy a gun, but you can't own bullets in Iran. So he would smuggle bullets out. And he
okay,
goes, now his parents are thanking him because if this resorts to looting, he actually has something to defend his family with.
yeah. And you look at this, what Iran and Israel are experiencing right now. It's absolutely terrible. But you just turn the lights off. Like you look at what has happened, the amount of disability, the amount of deficiencies that we have in our trades in this country, our ability to do stuff. If you can't take care of yourself, like, what good are you? And what good are you to your community? And when you start to look at that as a national level, like, look at America. I think it's, not much debate about it. This is the greatest war machine that has ever been created. Well, they shut down their last domestic lead mine, during the Obama administration. They can't even mine their own lead for bullets. They have to import it, right? And you look at this diversification, like just when Boeing builds a new plane and you have parts built in Germany, you have parts built there, like, no one can do anything themselves. This globalization and this reliance on just-in-time supply lines is so fragile, and people don't see the fragility in the system that we have, right? It's just like, well, I look around and, like, it doesn't look like the end of the world. Everything's cool. And it's like, okay, well, I think we can all agree that it's been weakened, right? And we're seeing our healthcare system being weakened, and we see, our ability to, maintain our infrastructure has been weakened. And at some point, you're going to see a cascade failure, right? Like, I'm in awe of the resilience of our nation, right? Like, they've been battering at its foundation for about a century now, and it still just keeps chugging along. And we're doing pretty good on the face of things. But it's like that big cottonwood tree. It's been there your whole life, this massive tree. You built a tree fort in it, you got hung a swing off of it, and then one day a gust of wind comes up and blows it over. And when it falls over, you realize it's rotten on the inside. And you don't notice it until the wind knocks it down. And I think if we're not careful, we're going to experience some pretty good hardship coming up. And they've destroyed our economy. We've imported the third world on a rate that's unprecedented in history. Like you look at the problems that they're having in European nations, right, where they've got no-go zones, right? I remember in the in the 2000s, all these Brits showing up and joining our regiment, ex British military, and they'd come over, and it's like, why are you guys coming over here? It's like, dude, I can't walk down the street in my own neighborhood, right?
Oh,
And what we've done here, as our currency continues to be devalued, and we see inflation continue, and things get tougher, the increase in crime, and we've brought very, very large amounts of people over from very hard places, and they know how to survive, right? And if you've been to third world countries and you look at what people have to do to protect their home, to protect their possessions and things like that, like I see that in our future if we if we don't start to make some severe changes. At this point, I don't know how, like, hardship is coming. I think our actions today and how effective, myself, people like you, are able to inform the public of, what's actually going on and the real threats that they face, will determine the level of hardship that we face. So, but again, like I said, I'm extremely hopeful because we're seeing the dialogue shift in the direction towards truth. Ultimately, that's the truth sets us free, and it's hard to find it. And sometimes when you're looking at it, it's hard to see it. But that's by being curious, working on your discernment ability, and educating yourself about what's going on, I think is the only way out of this.
Sean, where is there anywhere that people can go to follow you or support you?
No, I should.
Easy.
I'm
All
planning.
right.
I've got bad. I drove into town to be able to do this interview. I've got really bad internet. I'm thinking about doing something. Oh well, yeah. But as of right now, no. I'm
All
just
right. Well,
plugging
I
along,
can
getting ready.
I can answer in your stead. Sean Taylor testified to the National Citizens Inquiry. So if you go Google him, you can watch his testimony. There we go.
Well, thanks a lot, Payman. Keep up the good work, man. These are the conversations that people need to be having in this country and all over. And yeah, I wish you well, man.
Thank you very much for coming on, Sean. And I had a blast chatting with you.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. All right.
We'll do. Take
God
care.
bless.
Bye.